Hey everybody, welcome back to the Routine Podcast.
Gymnastics Conversations.
I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Chelsea's mom, Diana.
And we're back for episode 27.
Hi, Chels. How's Washington, D.C.?
You know, the Caps game is on right now.
Ooh.
Last time I checked, they were winning.
Okay.
So, not that I'm a hockey fan, but, you know, you tend to be in the city full of red.
Well, and the thing that I found interesting, I was listening a little bit about it, and they said Las Vegas is a brand new hockey team, and the Washington Capitals is a 50-year-old hockey team.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. And they thought it would be really awkward if Las Vegas beat the 50-year-old team. So we got to be pulling for the Caps, right?
Of course, of course.
And the other thing that I heard that was interesting, I know this is a gymnastics podcast, but did you hear about the poor little Cleveland player?
Oh, J.R. Smith?
Yeah, wasn't that the saddest?
He kind of screwed it up.
Well, you know, it's like I always say, that's somebody's child.
Good thing you're not on Twitter because there's like 100,000 memes going around the internet about him messing up.
That would be so sad.
It's funny.
It's not funny.
It keeps it lighthearted.
Okay. Well, he does make a lot of money to make that mistake.
Yeah.
But this is a gymnastics conversation.
Yes. Welcome back, everybody. Actually, did I share the Twitter comments with you that we got last week?
No, you know, we've been on this hiatus thing where we don't talk every week.
I know.
Which I miss you, but I have been just fine.
But we got so many comments over the past 2 weeks about our first summer series episode. People really, really enjoyed that.
Did we get memes like JR did?
No memes. We did get a new word, which we'll mention in one of our listener comments, but no memes.
Do you have good memes or just all memes are bad memes?
No. There's good memes, there's funny memes, there's very relatable memes.
Okay.
That's the good thing about a meme. It's just like, you never know what you're going to get until you read it. Let's start with our first listener comment. There were so many comments, so we're not going to be able to discuss them all.
But thank you to everybody.
Yes, thank you to everyone. But they were all kind of along the same lines. The first one being from @ABGym. And she actually put together a ranking similar to what Neil did for Grace and Anna back when they were going through the recruiting process.
Just as a reminder, because it's been a couple weeks, right? In our first summer series episode, we got the opportunity to talk to Neil Glenn. He's the parent of UCLA gymnast Anna and Grace Glenn. Obviously, they're twins. They're amazing gymnasts. And we got the opportunity to speak to him in the last podcast.
Yes, and he went pretty in depth about recruiting, which I think people really enjoyed. So @ABGym said, the Routine podcast with the Glenn's father and his recruiting rankings was fascinating, so I put together a similar 2018 ranking list. 1 is National Academic Ranking plus 2018 ranking. 2 is National Ranking relative to other schools within NCAA Gym plus 2018 ranking. And she goes on to list all of the different schools, which I think was really interesting. So if you guys want to see the list that she came up with, go to her Twitter page. Again, it's @ABGym_.
You know, whatever level you are, whatever grade you're in, it's really a good opportunity to just better understand the opportunities out there and how schools rank.
Yeah, definitely. Or if you're just a fan and a listener and you're just curious about how the different schools rank against each other, it's a great list to look at.
So ABGym, as Chelsea said, thank you so much for pulling that together. Mm-hmm. You know, that's really what this podcast is about, taking all of our various resources that we can all offer and provide and sharing with the gymnastics community. So the next tweet that I'd like to read, Chelsea, is from @ThomasFrayRP. And what Thomas said is, I just started listening to your podcast last night and I can't stop listening. It's exactly the podcast I've been waiting for! ! Thanks. So thanks, Thomas.
Yes, this tweet made me smile.
I know. Do you think that he started like from the very, very beginning when we were like trying to figure it all out?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think that the new listeners that we get they start with the episode that they found us on, and then they probably work their way backwards as opposed to starting from the beginning and working their way forward.
I think it would be great to start from the beginning and then go, because then it's like this crescendo building up on the season finale.
Yeah, but you already know how it's gonna end, so I would rather just hear UCLA winning or hear what the conference championships were like.
What still would be interesting to go from the first episode to where we ended the season. I think that'd be fun.
I guess. I think we've grown a lot since then. Hopefully, at least we have.
Remember, Chelsea, when we couldn't even get the thing edited and it was in the middle of the night and the audio was all screwed up? And
I think we still struggle with that today.
Well, not like we used to, because you used to call crying.
Exposed.
We've gotten better.
We have. You know what it was? It was leading up to Nationals weekend where we wanted to release 3 episodes in a row. That was like me training all season for that weekend.
It's so true.
Because, like, Mom, you know, during Nationals weekend, I was editing like a fool. We both were, really, though.
You would be in the car. As soon as we get in the car, you'd flip on the computer and you'd start. All I would hear was click, 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 click.
That was fun, though. I missed Nationals weekend. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun. In hindsight, it was fun. During the editing and, you know, in the middle of the night and in the hotel room.
Remember after UCLA won and we tried to record that night after? And, like, you asked me a question and I couldn't even look at you.
And I'm like, what's wrong with you? I have to suck it up every time. And if it was me saying, Chelsea, I'm tired. Chelsea, I can't. You would be like, Mom, you've got to do this.
Okay, but it wasn't even that I was tired. It was like every emotion in me had just been exhausted at that moment. And I couldn't do anything.
I know. But I'm just saying, as a daughter, you would have said, Mom, we need to do this. Get your act together.
Yeah, I would have no mercy.
As a mother, I say, honey, why don't you go to sleep and we'll do it in the morning?
Yeah. Maybe one time we'll release that footage.
We should do like a bloopers episode because we've had...
That would be like an hour and a half.
Oh, at least.
Oh, okay. Anyways, back to our listener comments. Mm-hmm. The last listener comment is from @TrueBlueAmerican. And they say, another great episode by the Routine Podcast. Loved hearing Neil Glenn talk about Grace's and Anna's recruitment and twingeries. Can't wait to hear who the next interview will be. Twingeries.
Yeah, wasn't that good?
Right?
And I wonder if True Blue American did that on the fly or had heard that somewhere before. We're going to give them credit. They did that on their own.
Right? It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, exactly. But glad that True Blue enjoyed that episode and also gave us a shout out for the rest of the interviews that we're going to have in the series.
Speaking of interviews, who do we have on today's episode?
Time to get serious, and this interview is a serious interview. But it was one out of all the interviews that we've done, except for my Sarah Finnegan interview, I have to say that. But of all the interviews that we've done, I think this one was one of my most enjoyable, but also one of my most emotional.
Yeah. Today we're interviewing UC Davis gymnast, or former gymnast now. She was a senior this past season, Alexis Brown. And we talked to her about how she decided to make a difference.
I think that's a good way to say it. Part of what we struggled with was how to introduce Alexis. But I think introducing her that way is perfect because we can let our listeners understand her story as she shared it with us. Hi, so we're so excited. We are joined by and we're doing this via Skype so I can say this, a beautiful gymnast, Alexis. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Alexis Brown is from UC Davis. So, Alexis, you are part of our summer series where we do more in-depth interview with gymnasts or people in the gymnastics community. So, welcome to our podcast.
Oh, thank you.
We thought we would start, obviously, by introducing you to our listeners, but if you could talk a little bit about yourself, talk about where you're from, anything that you want to share with our podcast listeners about who you are.
I grew up in Washington State. I went to Gymnastics East when I was younger, all the way up until I was 14 when I was about to leave for high school. And then going into high school, I moved to Huntington Beach, California, in SoCal, and I went to Team OC after trying out a couple of gyms, coached by Gishi. He is pretty well known in the gymnastics community. Even as I'm learning more and more today, as I'm already retired, I still meet people on the street that know him. And then, obviously went to UC Davis. And
you're an Aggie. So even though you've graduated, are you still an Aggie?
Of course.
And how old were you when you started doing gymnastics?
I was 2 years old? 3. I think 3.
Oh, wow. Was this your choice or your mom or your dad said, hey, I think she'd be good at this?
Well, I used to do cartwheels around, in my backyard and, around my goats and chickens and everything growing up on a farm, and my mom kept telling me that I was going to hit one of the animals or break the dining room table, so our compromise was put me in gymnastics 1 time a week, and then from there on, I've just never really let up with that passion and love, so she's never really had any second chances to take that back.
Oh, and we're laughing because Chelsea knows she was upside down more than she was right side up. And I'm going to tell a story which she probably won't appreciate, but... We came home, my husband and I did, and there was a big hole in the wall.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. And she blamed her older brother.
I did.
So can you admit now, Chelsea, that was you in the cartwheel?
That was me. It was me. It was not my brother.
So we get it. So you grew up on a farm.
Yeah, it was pretty odd for where I was living. We lived in a pretty suburban area in Washington State. But my stepdad actually owned a lot of land, and the farm wasn't for production purposes. He just loved animals and allowed me to kind of just take over that part of our house. So I'd be like, okay, can we get another goat? And he's like, okay, you have to take care of all of them. And I was like, okay, but can we get 10 more chickens and another sheep and another lamb? And before you knew it, we had literally 1 or 2 of everything you could think of on a farm.
Wow. It was like Noah's Ark.
Really though, yeah.
And so you love animals.
I love animals. I'm obsessed. I actually majored in animal science here. Well, I'm about to finish out my degree here, and am applying to vet school in the fall.
Wow, and you think it was based on growing up on the farm?
Yes, I definitely know my passion started there and has always grown from there.
All right, so back to gymnastics then. So you start when you're about 2, and you find that you love the sport at that point?
I think that there were a lot of ups and downs. At first, I wasn't too serious about it. It was just kind of something that I did after school that I was super excited about every day, but there wasn't a whole lot of depth to my thought of why I loved what I was doing. It was just super cool and exciting and everything. I mean, even when I became a 5th grader in middle school, I was thinking about it more in depth and more passionately as something that's not just an activity that you do after school, but a part of my identity. When I got older, there were definitely some things that proved to test that love for gymnastics. I mean, every gymnast knows that injuries plague you and it gets in your mind, but after every one of those that I've overcome, my love for the sport has grown even more. If eligibility wasn't a thing, I would just keep going until I couldn't go anymore. So,
when did you know that you were good?
In level 4. After I got held back for not being able to do a press handstand, I still remember the exact day. I got held back and all my friends went on to level 5, but I was still in level 4. But then the next year, I was the best level 4 ever. And I was I got second. What the heck? Like, I'm not even good anymore. And the next meet I'd get first. I'm like, okay, we're good again. And I was like, I think that was so necessary because before I didn't know how to be confident in myself. So from there on, with that confidence, I think it just really propelled me forward in the next couple of years.
So at that point, did you have a favorite event, and how does it compare to now?
I would have to say that my favorite event has always been floor because of the dancing part. I mean, the other events were really scary. I was terrified to let go of the bar on my tap swing flyaway. Like, I refused to do it. I was like, I can do it out of a giant. I cannot do it out of a tap swing. This is not happening.
That's interesting. I feel like it's usually the other way around. People are scared of letting go from the giant, not the tap swing.
I think that now, or even in my later years of gymnastics, it was never about having a favorite event. It was more like, what's going on good for today? Is today a good, powerful leg day for vault and floor, or is today a really good, like, sharp mental day for beam and bars? It was never really like, I don't want to go to beam, or I don't want to go to floor. Yeah, I have love for all of them.
Wow. Still, you have love for all of them.
Yes, definitely.
Is your favorite what you're the best at, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it. I think last year when I was doing really, really well on beam and tying the school record and everything, I thought that beam was my favorite event ever. And I've always loved beam, definitely, but I think that extra little push of, you keep winning, this must be, like, your favorite event. But really, I just love the combination of all of them. I can't imagine just practicing or competing one event. It's like the combination of all of it, just having certain levels of focus at different times is so exciting that all of them are too great.
That's so good. Now, I think that may be where you guys are different. I think you have some least favorite events.
Yeah, bars was never my event. And I think you would agree with that.
Yes, we would agree with that. So how did you end up at UC Davis?
Well, I hadn't actually heard of Davis when I was younger, living in Washington. I never even really thought about it until I went to high school and I decided, okay, this is the path I want to go down. I love veterinary medicine, and UC Davis is the #1 in the world for vet medicine and for undergraduate animal sciences. So I was like, this is a no-brainer. This is where I want to be regardless of, yes, I need to go for gymnastics because I cannot give up that passion, but walking onto campus and seeing everything, my heart was singing. I just felt like I was at home and there were no other choices from there on. I had visited other colleges, but that one special feeling that I was meant to be there.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You've graduated, right? Or you're about to graduate?
I graduate June 15th.
Oh, congratulations. That's so exciting.
And do we know what we're going to do when we grow up?
Well, I hope that I will be a veterinarian. That is the goal.
It's a tough degree. I don't think people understand as much as what's involved in going to vet school. Maybe you can explain that.
Well, there's only about 30 vet schools in the entire country, which is much different than graduate school, law school, or medical school, really. I don't even know how to explain it. You're in each class with pretty much the same group of people from freshman year to senior year, and they're all your competition. It's created a really good environment here and allowing me to continue my competitiveness really outside of gymnastics and keeping myself mentally focused as well. It's like the same environment, so I love it.
Based on everything we know about you from what we read and what we've learned today, you're going to do it. There's no doubt.
Last season, your senior year, you qualified to regionals as an individual qualifier. You were the MPSF conference champion on beam and on floor. And actually on beam, you scored a 9.925, which tied the school record. You tied your own school record of 28 scores of 9.8 or better, and ended with a total of 87 9.8s or better in your collegiate career. And you hit a 39 plus on your all-around score 7 times this season.
If you guys could see Alexis's smile on her face right now. Congrats. And we wanted to do that first before we talked about anything else. Because you got creds.
Yeah, you know? Do. You really do.
So talk to us about your season and how you felt.
I think that the season had a lot of ups and downs. I came straight out of the gates. I felt like really strong. From there, I felt like it was building a lot. But I think that I was really focused on oh, this is the last this is the last competition at home, this is my last competition in Seattle, in Northern California, these kind of things, which got really distracting. And I wish that I would have been a little bit more in the moment, but at the same time, I think I had the most fun that I had ever had in any season. Because it wasn't just about, okay, like, don't talk to anyone, in the zone, have to do this to win. It was more like, okay, take a breath, take it all in. I think that when it got distracting, I really saw it in my scores. There was like a little bit of a lull, and I kept getting in my head on at least one event out of 4, which was so frustrating. But I'm so glad that in the end at regionals, I finished out the way that I wanted to, and I felt really good about leaving on a positive note. I saw the flash score of a 10 at regionals, and I was just crying, and I was like, the meet is not even halfway over. What are you doing? After every event, just tears everywhere.
You were celebrating, you know? Mm-hmm. Was that your first 10 you ever saw too?
Yes.
That's why you were crying.
Yes, definitely.
And I do think we need to obviously transition to when we talk about your season. You decided that you were going to make a difference this season. Can you talk to our listeners about what you decided to do and when?
I started last season, my junior year in January, all the way till the end of my senior year. And I had made that decision, I think, maybe 4 months in advance or so, really looking into Colin Kaepernick's protest for social justice and protesting against police brutality. And that was so close to home. I mean, it was right in the Bay in San Francisco, and I think that truly inspired me to use this platform that I have to really open people's eyes up. Even if people weren't going to change their minds, people were going to be talking about it, which was more than what was happening before. Especially in this sport where our platform might be very small-circled, but people do talk, and I really hoped that would reach out to younger girls to tell them that, yes, this is a sport for yourself and for your team, but it's also something you can use that's going to make a difference in the world, in the country, in your state. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I kneeled during the national anthem during every meet and raised my fist for Black Power whenever I'd win an award.
Let's go back to 4 months before January of your junior year. Mm-hmm. You're kind of thinking about doing this. You're wrestling with it in your mind about what you want to do and how you want to do it. Who do you talk to about it? Do you talk to your parents? Do you talk to your coach? Talk to your teammates?
I think that at that time, I didn't talk to my parents, my coaches, or my teammates. None of them were people of color. So I was nervous to bring that up, to get discouraged while I was still not completely sure myself. I really confided in my fellow athletes at UC Davis on the track team, basketball team, football team. It's a very charged conversation that everyone is really talking about in the Black athlete community, especially at UC Davis. I know in a lot of other universities in this country also. So it wasn't really an odd thing to just bring up, because I felt like we were always talking about, like, what do you think about Colin Kaepernick's protest? What do you think about, you know, the Seahawks saying that they're going to do the same thing, but they get barred and all that stuff? Like, we're always talking about these things. Really allowing them to support me was key factors in allowing me to go ahead and being confident in what I was about to do.
Did any of them say, no, don't do this. This is not a good idea?
I don't think so. I mean, a couple of people had said, okay, if you're going to do this, be aware of what might happen. Be aware that it'll take a full blow on your own confidence, how you feel about yourself and everything. Like, you never know what's going to happen. So I think that they were trying to be more cautious and friendly than telling me that I shouldn't do it in the first place. I don't think anyone just said flat out no from the people that I really trust. So.
And were they right in their caution?
They definitely were. I think that I had underestimated it going into my protest. I didn't know what would really happen. I thought of the things that could happen, but I was like, oh no, we live in Northern California, nothing weird's gonna happen, like, it's fine. But it was a difficult time for sure. Going into the first meet, I remember it was at Cal. No one noticed on my team, except for the 2 girls standing right on either side of me holding my hand. I don't think they understood what was happening. They just kind of looked and were like, oh, okay, sure.
She's tired.
Yeah.
She's tired before the meet starts.
Yeah, no one asked me any questions. No one even bat an eyelash. I was like, okay, cool. So we didn't have the conversation at all the very first meet.
So you did this protest that ended up being a quiet protest. But you did it nonetheless.
Yes. I think at that very first meet, they didn't know. I mean, I hadn't told them anything up until that point. There were no warnings that I gave them. The next weekend, I sent out a message to my entire team talking about why I was doing this, and if they wanted to come talk to me and have any questions, then I was definitely open to that. And I think that our team captains told the coaches, and it was awkward. The home opener of every year has a lot of faculty, the faculty's kids, and we're supposed to run out with them onto the floor and stand out there for the national anthem all holding hands with a bunch of, small children. And I think that our coaches were really nervous about how that would be received, but especially by the faculty that had kids running with us. So I was told that I wasn't allowed to run out with the child, and I was very disappointed. And I think that I took that so much to heart. And I think that now I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, it's my protest. At least you're thinking about it. But at that time, I took it a lot more personally than I probably should have.
You can still see the emotion with you now, actually.
Yeah.
So that affected you.
Yeah, it really did.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, did you think, I don't know if this is the right decision? Or did you commit more?
Yeah, I think that it actually made me dig my heels in a little bit more. Because surrounded in a sport that is white-dominated, especially in that instance of people that did not want to hear why or ask any questions or be a little bit more sympathetic to what was happening, made me realize, okay, you guys really do need to see this all carry out. This is not something I'm going to take lightly anymore.
It became much more personal for you in that moment, it sounds like.
Yes, definitely.
And at that point, have we, of course, I'm a mom, so I'm going to say this. Have we talked to Mom at this point yet?
I think that the next morning I called my mom and I was like, guess what happened? Like, oh my gosh, it was so weird. Like, I cannot believe that all that awkwardness went down last night. And she was like, what? Why would you, like, what? Why? Where did this even come from? Like, what is happening?
That sounds like what a mom would say.
Yeah. She was really shocked.
And you're calling her for the emotional support, and she's trying to catch up.
Yes.
Sound familiar, Chelsea?
At least we tell you. It may be a little bit late, but at least we tell you.
So did she at that point try to change your mind?
Yeah, she definitely tried to change my mind. I don't think she quite understood why. She wasn't ready for all of this all at once. And I think that as we've grown together, she's been so much more open into learning and, being supportive of that. But it really gave me a lens that, okay, our parents are people. They're not like this magical thing up in perfect world that can just be like, okay, yep, that happened. Okay, let me just give you a hug. Like, they're people with their own emotions and their own feelings about certain things. So it was good to see her go through all of that and watch her grow in this experience with me.
Well, and that's what's so amazing about the experience. You committed to it for the reasons you did, not knowing kind of this full circle effect that it was going to have on your life and the people in your life. Mm-hmm.
It really had an effect on everyone around me that was willing to stick by me in that time. Even people that weren't willing to stick by me. I'm sure that they will remember this for most likely the rest of their lives, because it was a very charged time, especially in my junior year.
Yeah. If you can, tell us the worst moment and then the best moment.
The worst moment was when I was at the Air Force Academy for a meet. I had kneeled and I saw some people up in the stands kind of make some weird faces, and I just kind of brushed it off like, oh, whatever, like this is, not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a meet. Who cares? And then going into award session, I think I had won first place on every event except for one that I got second place. So on the top of the podium, I raised my fist and I wasn't smiling because, okay, I cannot confirm, but a lot of our scores from that day, looking at the judges' faces of me kneeling, were pretty representative of how upset that they were. At least that was my interpretation of what I was feeling looking up at them while I was kneeling.
Sure.
So I was upset. I had just won all these events, but I was upset at the way that the judges that were supposed to be impartial. So I raised my fist and I look up in the stands with my blank face on, not smiling, and I see a couple of parents mocking me and mouthing some weird things to me. I was overly upset and I took it too much to heart. Every time I went up there, raised my fist, blank face, watching them mock me every single time for 5 events. After awards had finished, I was like, okay, like, what do I do? Like, should I go up there and be like, that's not okay? Like, I don't know what to do. And one of my teammates said, this is one of the reasons why you started this in the first place, to educate people. So if someone feels the need to mock you, you should calmly go up there and ask them if they want to know why.
Wow. That's brave.
I went up into the stands and I had started talking to the parent. It got pretty heated. I wouldn't even say yelling, just a lot of like really strong words. Then my coach looks up and sees me in the stands talking really strongly to a mother, and he thinks that we're about to fight. He gets really mad at me, and my teammates wouldn't speak to me the entire way home.
Oh.
Yeah. Or like 2 solid weeks after that.
None of your teammates?
I remember going through entire practices being silent.
I'm so sorry.
I still get emotional now.
I know.
Yeah.
The discussion that you had with that parent, do you think that made a difference? Did they hear you?
I'm not sure if they did. At that point, I think I learned a lesson that it's not my job to save everyone. It's not my job to educate everyone, especially someone who is not open to learning. But I'm sure that she'll remember that.
I'm certain that that's not something she's ever going to forget. Mm-hmm. And I'm also certain that it's not something your teammates are going to forget or your coach is going to forget. And so back to the reason why you were doing that, it was for the impact, for the education and the knowledge. Mm-hmm. And, you know, no question about it, that's what you did. So for 2 weeks, you were isolated on your own island. When did it get better?
Well, our coaches had called a meeting. It was more geared towards the microaggressions that I was no longer taking by my teammates. Not all of them, just some teammates that had been very racially insensitive. And we had a team meeting about how to approach this, which looking back was a very bad idea.
It was? I would think that would be the best idea.
I think that it was a bad idea because a 19-year-old young woman of color cannot educate a room full of people that have grown up in their own ways, thinking their own things. It's a lot of pressure to put on a young girl.
That's true. That shouldn't have been your role, quite frankly.
Yeah, it definitely shouldn't have been my role, and I think it put a little bit more of a strain.
At what point are we in the season? Are we almost over with the season? Because I'm wanting to feel this season being over. I'm just going to tell you now. I'm ready for this to end.
Well, the Air Force meet was, I think, exactly halfway through the season.
Still got halfway to go.
Yeah, we still got a long ways to go.
And are you performing well at these events?
I think that was the height of my entire gymnastics career.
Wow.
Good for you.
You were motivated.
Yeah.
I really took it upon myself to dive emotionally, mentally, physically into the sport. I mean, I didn't really have many people to talk to about it, so I just put every ounce of myself into the sport for the practices, competitions, like the way I was eating, doing mental logs, talking to counselors about how to like improve my focus during meets, because that was my entire world for that time, because that's the only thing I had left. I mean, from Air Force and on, I had matched the school record, I think 3 times on beam, won every event, I think multiple times, and done all of my PRs in that season from the worst time of my protest all the way till the end of the season.
So you're standing at the top of the podium quite frequently.
Yes.
That's great.
I think a large part of my success was having the backing of the community at UC Davis, having the Cross-Cultural Center and the African Diaspora Center. Everyone a part of those communities came to the gymnastics meets, which was insane. I mean, before that, I had looked up in the stands and I saw maybe 5 black people, like max. And from there on, hundreds. I mean, people filling entire sections that were my friends and being there to support me on so many different levels. That was so powerful because it was more than just me and more than just my protest, but making these people proud of me. I mean, having them support me and knowing that no matter what, they still have my back. So
you expanded your community.
Definitely.
How do you do at conference? Do you do well that year? I mean, Chelsea probably knows. I don't know.
Yeah.
Chelsea says she does.
Conference was amazing my junior year. I won floor, got second on vault, won the all-around, won MPSF Gymnast of the Year. Regionals went well. I just had so many little mistakes because I was so nervous. But I mean, I hit 4 for 4. I still got a 39. I was overall pretty proud of that performance. But I mean, I had nationals in my vision and I was like, okay, everything has to be perfect. And you know, when any gymnast says that everything has to be perfect, things do not go perfect. So,
yeah. The opposite of perfect happens.
But you had a great conference.
Yes, it was so rewarding on so many levels to be able to have those titles and do what I had set out to do at the beginning.
And did you start beginning to see a little bit of a thawing or a changing of your team at that point? Or it really the season had to end and a summer had to come and new teammates had to come in?
I think that at the very end, regionals was good, but I thought that it was a really positive experience. We put past anything that we had between us, and then coming back in the spring, it was pretty different because all of the seniors had left. We weren't all in the gym at the same time. We weren't all competing for a spot in the lineup, and not having to see everyone at once made it a little bit more manageable.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you start, working out with your new team at this point, you're a senior. You've learned so much of the previous year. I mean, you talk about life lessons, but you also have to decide at that point what you're going to do for your senior year and whether you're going to continue the protest or not. Did that cross your mind that, okay, I did what I wanted to accomplish and now I'm just going to enjoy my senior year and it's going to be about me?
Nope, it didn't even cross my mind, to be honest. I knew that I only had 1 year left with this platform. I don't know what other platforms I will have left in life to be able to do that. Because yes, gymnastics is for me, but at the same time, it's just a sport. My thought was, whether I do good or bad going into my senior year, the world will not stop turning. No one will really care. I mean, they might remember my name somewhere along the line, but they're not going to be like, oh yeah, like her senior year was kind of bad. Or like, oh, she didn't win conference her senior year, like, whatever. I knew it didn't really matter that much, but continuing my protest definitely would matter to the young girls in the stands, to the parents, to the teammates, to anyone who was possibly watching.
And how is your team handling it, including your coach at this point?
We didn't have conversations about it that entire summer from what I remember. I didn't tell anyone that I was going to continue my protest for the next year. I mean, I had talked a lot about it to the supervisors at the school, the athletic director, pretty much anyone who was willing to hear me out about how to address the situation for later years to come if anyone else were to do this, what new systems need to be in place for support.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So we start in January. It's your senior year, and the national anthem plays, and what happens?
Nothing happens. Yeah, we were at Stanford. I had the same girl standing next to me as I always did, and there was a lot less drama, to say the least, my senior year about it. No parents in the stands mocking me, no teammates really making that much of a fuss about it. I mean, as always, the microaggressions continue throughout the school, throughout the team, but I think that my own growth was being able to pick and choose when I was going to say something and how it would affect me in the moment. Because some people will just refuse to learn.
Yeah. I think it's your growth. I also think it was the growth of the community too. So whether it was your teammates, whether it was your coaches, whether it was parents, whether it was the movement itself, everybody moved forward. Hats off to you. That kind of was your point, I think.
Oh, thank you.
As a former gymnast, oftentimes I was the only person of color on my team. Underrepresentation was my gymnastics career for 15 years. And when I saw the article about what you were doing, it was just incredible. If I was on UC Davis, I would be right there with you. So thank you. Nailed? Yeah, I would have.
See, this is what I'm talking about, parents not knowing. See, this is what I'm talking about.
So thank you for everything that you're doing. I think even for the younger gymnasts, this is really important for them. So I think you're changing the future.
Oh, thank you.
And just for the listeners, for all those who didn't understand why you did it, if you had to share why this was important to you or what it is that you wanted people to know through this platform, what would you say to those listening?
I think starting off with why this movement was so important to me, I see people in my brother's community over in New Orleans saying that he feels like he's unsafe to take his kids to school. And I hear these stories about atrocious police brutality. I hear stories within our own community at Davis, which is a very notably sheltered community, and I see people being arrested for loitering. That really triggered something in me to say that, okay, this is so much bigger than all of these little microaggressions that get me going every day. This is safety. This is the future of our people as a country. This is our future. And how are we going to just stand by and let this happen? This is huge. And I want to let people know that in any community this is happening. I think that people put themselves in a box and don't think that they have to deal with these things in life, but it'll always be connected to you. You will always know someone who is affected by police brutality and microaggressions. So it's important to all of us in America and around the world to be aware of this, to be educated, and to know how to stop this.
Well, so you're quite brave, and we're proud of you. The impact that you've made, and you can even listen with Chelsea, right? So the impact that you've made, again, I don't know if you sought to do that in the beginning, but clearly it's the impact that you've had. But most importantly, congratulations on the success of your career, whether it's gymnastics or the graduation that's about to happen in a couple weeks for you, or the beginning of your career to be this incredible veterinarian. So congratulations, Alexis.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me share my story.
Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
All the best to you.
Thank you.
Oh man, Mom, that was a good interview, right?
Yeah, that was pretty deep, Chelsea. And I don't know if we realized it was going to go as deep as it did. Probably should have. But I think it's when she got emotional. I don't think any of us expected that, including her. When she started tearing up while she was remembering what it felt like in her junior year, that's when you knew that this has had an incredible impact on her life.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think that you walking through the situation with her almost made her reflect on her last 2 years as a gymnast in a different way than she might have previously.
For her, she was in the moment every day, every meet, and was on and prepared and almost stilled to the fact of what was happening to her. Mm-hmm. She was strong, right? And I think now that she is about to graduate, but her gymnastics career is over, I think through this opportunity of the interview, she began to reflect in a way which I'm not sure she has had to up until the point of the interview. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And I'm honestly so honored, not to get cheesy, but I'm really and truly honored that she was willing to share that raw emotion and those raw thoughts with us on our podcast. And, I remember when I first saw the California Aggie news article about her protest. I'll share a link to that article on our website. And I remember when I first saw it and I shared it with you.
I don't know if you remember, but it was right before we interviewed Coach Galvin for their meet.
It was. And I knew at that moment that I read the article that we needed to have her on the podcast. There was no question about it. And, in the interview, Alexis talked a lot about using her platform to the best of her ability before she was no longer able to use that platform. Through all of the editing that I did, it made me reflect about the platform that you and I now have and being able to reach people around the world. And so I wanted to share her story. I think her story is worth sharing. And that's why we had her on the podcast.
Even if you don't agree with the decisions that she made, I hope everyone got the chance to listen from her perspective about the decisions that she made. Again, we don't all have to agree, but out of respect for each other and respect for the gymnastics community, hopefully everyone got the chance to understand why she decided to do what she did. And I have to tell you, when you obviously have had a chance to talk about it, you are listening to it and understanding it from the issue's perspective. I see it as a daughter, a young daughter making this decision. And as a mother, we can guide our children, but at the end of the day, they have to do and live their lives and then deal with the consequences of the decisions that they make. In her case, I think she clearly has had to deal with those consequences. But even, as you heard her say, she wouldn't have changed it. She would do it again tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And we have gymnastics lessons, but in this case, we've got life lessons. And I think the decisions that she made and the impact on her life is something that she should be very proud of. Just before we leave the interview, I do want to share a thanks to Mark Honbo, is from UC Davis, and he worked like crazy to get this interview for us and to coordinate our schedule. So Mark, thank you. And Mark actually was sitting next to Alexis during the full interview. What we learned from Mark, who has been with Alexis kind of through this whole process as the school's media coordinator, while he was sitting with Alexis for that interview, he said that he got emotional as well. And I'd like to share a little bit of what he emailed to us following the interview. He said, many of our student athletes, plus members of the African diaspora student group, came out in droves to take a knee with her. It was a wonderful gesture of solidarity. It was pretty moving to see that at the time, but after hearing today's interview, I can only imagine what it must have been like for Lexi to look across the way and see literally hundreds of people joining her protest during those meets. I share that to say, while she was sharing her story with us, we were all in the moment, including Mark, who had been with Lexi through the last 2 years of this process. But her telling of the story put us all in the emotional struggle that this young lady was going through. Again, if you don't agree with her protest, hopefully you understand why she decided to protest, because that's really the impact that she wanted to have is. So as you said, thank you, Alexis, so much. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us and sharing your story with our listeners.
Hopefully it did touch you in some way or another. But
it's time to lighten it up.
Yeah, to end on a lighter note.
Woo! Our summer series continues.
Yes. We will be back in 2 weeks.
And I really like our next interview too, Chels.
It's another deep one.
It is, but it's a good one.
A very good one.
Another one that makes you really think about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
It makes you think outside of the sport. You know, it makes you think human being to human being.
Agree.
Continue the conversation with us. You can tweet us at Routine Podcast, email us at info@theroutinepodcast.com, or visit our website, theroutinepodcast.com, where you can do what, Mom?
Scroll down to the bottom. There's a microphone. Click the microphone and leave us a voicemail message.
Let us know, who would you guys like us to feature on one of our summer series interviews? If you like what you're hearing, be sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a beat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode, because Mom and I really did. I know we're trying to wrap it up, but I read in a book one time that usually the things that you struggle to do the most are the things that need to be done the most. So although this interview was not an easy conversation to be had, it needs to be done. And that is where we leave you all today. Namaste.
Namaste.
Talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.